from Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. This is the All Access Med School Admissions Podcast. Hello again, everybody. I'm your host, Christian Essman. I'm the Senior Director of Admissions and Financial Aid here at the med school, and we're on lockdown. And surprise, you're getting back-to-back episodes. I know it's been quiet for a little while. We have a little kind of a busy month going on last month in April, but now I've got a few things rolling, and so I didn't want to wait to get this one out to you. I am so excited to bring you my guest today from the AAMC to talk about topics surrounding the AMCAS application and some of the recent changes that have come to the application process due to the coronavirus pandemic. These guys, they're heavy hitters, and I've been lucky enough to rub elbows with them at various conferences. Let me tell you, they are great people who want to see you reach your dreams of becoming a physician. I've been really wanting to introduce you to some of the leaders at the AAMC, so this is a great opportunity. We talk a lot about the application process in this podcast episode today, so you're going to find quite a few links in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. Now that I've given you that big build-up, let me tell you about who you're going to be hearing from today. Dr. Jeffrey Young is the Senior Director of Student Affairs and Programs at the AAMC, where he serves as the AAMC's Principal Student Affairs Officer and Lead Content Expert in Undergraduate Medical Education Student Services. Dr. Young has had just about every role you can have in a medical school. He's been a Dean of Student Affairs, not once, but twice, a Dean of Admissions, and an Assistant Dean for Multicultural Affairs. The focus areas under his leadership at the AAMC includes admissions, student affairs, student diversity affairs, student records, and student financial aid. Dr. Young's unit also offers learners across the medical education continuum services in career planning, financial literacy, decision-making, and debt management and preparation for application and transition to medical school and residency. That's a lot. His team is recognized as a leader in holistic review and provides resources and services that enable medical schools and other health professional schools to apply the holistic review framework to their selection processes. Dr. Young works closely with the national leadership of the Group of Student Affairs, and that's our department in admissions, so we fall under that section, where they advise on strategic direction and of critical issues that impact undergraduate medical education to develop and address national policies that yield effective practices within student services. Additionally, he works closely with the AAMC Student Surveys Advisory Committee to improve medical education by providing reliable data and effective and timely program evaluation tools for medical schools. The other voice you're going to be hearing today is that of Patrick Fritz. He is the Senior Director of the American Medical College Application Service, or AMCAS. In his role, Patrick oversees the day-to-day operations of AMCAS, including the development and maintenance of more than 20 applications that support the service. His working intricate day-to-day involves with interfacing of external technology vendors, managing document processing and verification, and providing multifaceted support, education, and training to applicants, pre-health advisors, and to more than 150 AMCAS participating schools. Prior to joining AMCAS, Patrick was the Director of Outreach and Engagement for the Electronic Residency Application Service, otherwise known as ERAS, which is what medical students use to apply to residency programs. He held those roles in several strategic consulting companies prior, providing IT and management consulting services to government and nonprofit and corporate clients in the healthcare and education sectors prior to this role. So, hey, I'm excited to bring you these guys, so let's get right after it. Here we go. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I have Dr. Jeffrey Young. Thanks for joining me this morning.
I'm glad to be here, and please call me Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And Patrick Fritz, the Senior Director of AMCAS.
Thanks for having me, Christian.
Hey, it's good to hear from you. Hey, guys, before we get into all the things we wanted to talk about today, I want to just take a minute, why don't you, we'll start with Jeff. Jeff, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what your role is and what does that entail at the AAMC as the Senior Director of Student Affairs and Programs?
Sure. If you don't mind, Chris, I'd like to just say that my hope is that all of your listeners are safe and well and taking care of themselves during this pandemic. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, just to recognize that our country is, in this world, is being impacted in a way that I've not seen in my lifetime. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and hope all are well. So as Senior Director for Student Affairs and Programs at the AAMC, I work very closely with the Group on Student Affairs, which really consists of 5 areas of expertise. That would include admissions, student affairs, student diversity affairs, student records, and financial aid. And I'm considered sort of the student affairs subject matter expert at the association. Some of my other responsibilities include working with a very talented group of individuals that are responsible for a FIRST program, which is really about debt management, careers in medicine, which really is a professional development counseling resource that's available to medical students and those that advise them. I also work very closely with a team that works on holistic review, which is a process by which we encourage schools to look more broadly, not just at metrics, not just at a score or GPA, but really to take into consideration those experiences and attributes that make the individual who they are. And I also work very closely with the student surveys at medical school. So, and then anything else that's assigned. So we're pretty busy, but we do really work collaboratively with, for example, my colleague Patrick Fritz.
Yeah, Patrick, why don't you tell us a little bit about your role as the Senior Director of AMCAS?
Sure. Thanks, Christian. And I'd just like to echo Jeff's message that hope everyone out there is well and safe. So I am the Senior Director of the American Medical College Application Service, AMCAS. And in this role, I oversee the day-to-day operations of AMCAS. And that includes many different technical applications, but specifically for applicants, the web application, the AMCAS application. I work with external technology vendors, so how we manage our transcripts and letters of recommendation, oversee the management of the document processing and verification of the applications that come through. And then we also provide support, education, and training to applicants, pre-health advisors, and the more than 150 MCAS participating schools.
Wow. Well, we're going to get into some of that stuff here in a little bit. But before we do, I want to start with Jeff. Before we get into those topics, Jeff, can you I want to take a step back first and let's talk a little bit about the AAMC. Can you give us a little bit of a glimpse into what these days have been like at the AAMC over the last 2 months?
Sure. I'm not sure how familiar your listeners are, but the AAMC is a member serving institution. And so we serve the 157 medical schools, USMD medical schools in this country. We also work very closely with teaching hospitals, various societies, specialist societies. So we're a relatively large organization, not-for-profit, that really offers leadership and service to those members that I just alluded to. And so the last few weeks have been all hands on deck. We have multiple constituents. So not only do we thinking about the aspirant to medical school or the applicant to medical school, but we're also thinking about the medical student and his or her experiences. My work involves a lot of working with then those administrators, deans, and staff that work with the medical student throughout their as a medical student. But we also work with those students as they make transitions to residency, We work with CEOs of our teaching hospitals. We work with advocacy on the Hill. And so we have a unit that also does that, as well as other responsibilities. So while we may think about the AAMC only in the aspect of application to medical school or the application to residency, we are much more broad and have multiple constituents. And so during this pandemic crisis, we actually have what we call our rapid response team, which consists of basically all of our units, if you will, all of our departments. Representatives meet daily or at least 3 times a week at this point to assess what's happening. What are the needs of the community? What are the needs of, and when I say community, I mean that very broadly, the community of medical education. What are the needs of applicants? What are the needs of medical students? What are the needs of residents? What are the needs of CEOs and teaching hospitals? How do we advocate on behalf to, Congress about the needs of our members? So it's been an incredibly busy time. And I think that we are just really working collectively and collaboratively to ensure to the best of our ability that we are working in lockstep. We're communicating internally so that we can provide the most effective and efficient resources, timely resources to our large constituency groups.
Yeah, I mean, I've even seen Dr. Scorton, the president of the AAMC, on the news channels advocating for testing and things like that. So the when you say the constituency is very broad, I mean, there's no doubt about it. You guys cover a lot of people and advocate for a lot of people. Jeff, what would you say? What have been some of those biggest challenges that you've been facing during this time? I'm sure there's a multitude of them, but just as you kind of reflect, what's been some of the biggest ones you've run into?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's just everything has been moving so rapidly.
Yeah,
and I think the fact that this pandemic has really forced a country, in essence, to think differently about how it operates. And so nothing is normal. We can't go from our day to day and do what we used to do. We have to adapt. We have, as a staff, because of COVID-19, we have been really operating from home for the past 7 or 8 weeks. So that has really required us to adapt in ways that we had not anticipated. And I think just really trying to anticipate what the changes may be, how COVID-19 may impact those that we serve, and trying to, again, as I alluded to earlier, communicate effectively and think about how we can best provide resources. Not only, again, at the college level for those that aspire to become physicians, but really throughout the whole house of medicine. So I think it's just, we've all had to adapt quickly. I often have said to my colleagues and constituents, at times the association is like a huge ocean liner and that we may not be able to turn as quickly. I would say what I've learned in the past 7 to 8 weeks is that we can indeed turn quickly and pivot to try to meet the needs of our large constituency. So it's been an adaptation, and I'm proud of this organization and the way in which we've been able to try to meet the needs of our respective groups.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing we've been trying. Our office is, as we get emails and questions coming to us from applicants and prospective applicants about this, and there's a lot of anxiety and unknowns out there. And one thing we've been trying to tell them is, one, like you mentioned, things are moving rapidly, and two, we're literally all dealing with this in some way. So it's not like there's just one school that's having to deal with this problem and everybody else is fine and they're going to be disadvantaged. I mean, literally everybody is dealing with this in some way, and we're trying to adapt as quickly as possible. New information comes in every day some way into our processes and offices. And
right. And Chris, I appreciate you raising the issue about the anxiety. I think this is a period of time when we have internally, as an organization, but also even within my core team, we acknowledge that this is a very scary time, and I think it's okay to acknowledge that and recognize that, and that the association, I think, is really sensitive that this is a anxiety-filled time for those that want to pursue medicine, and then for those who are medical students thinking about their career.
Right.
So thank you for elevating that. This is a very anxiety-filled time, and I think we're trying to be very sensitive to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're medical schools and the AAMC, just to acknowledge the moment, right?
Yes.
Like that, acknowledge the moment that there is a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of concern and a lot of unknowns. And and that's okay. We need to acknowledge that and not just ignore it.
Right.
Jeff, for many students in the springtime, as they are registering for the MCAT or they're initiating their AMCAS application, it's their first real contact with the AAMC. And I don't know, I think applicants might think that the AAMC is this just big ocean liner, like you said, and they're just an AMCAS ID number. Can you describe what the AAMC does, how they do work for applicants and for medical students?
Right, sure. So I think a large part of what we do is that we don't work in a bubble. As Patrick alluded to, we work with pre-health advisors. We work very closely with admissions deans. One of the areas that I neglected to say that I'm also responsible for, ultimate responsibility for, is our medical school admission requirements, which we call the MSAR. So we're actively working with, again, pre-health advisors, applicants. We're working with our medical schools, really to try to encourage them to be flexible, recognizing that this is a highly unusual and unprecedented time. And how do we try to ensure that we are providing information that is timely, and we're getting input from those that are directly impacted by this pandemic. So as an example, Patrick and his team, and he'll talk about this, has an advisory committee to AMCAS. I work closely with a group called a committee called Committee on Admissions. So we've actually had joint meetings with those two communities to ensure that we have the appropriate information that we need so that we can then make decisions that are appropriate for our applicants. And then for our medical students, because this pandemic has significantly impacted their progress, as an example, in their clinical years, we've been working with student affairs deans. We've been in communication with the NBME, which in part runs the licensing exams for medical students and other professionals, to ensure that we have the information that will enable our medical schools make decisions. We're consulting with them. As you indicated, our president and CEO, Dr. David Scorden, is advocating for various issues. So we are truly working on behalf of our membership.
Yeah, you mentioned the AMCAS Advisory Committee and the Committee on Admissions, and I want our listeners to kind of know that the AMCAS Advisory Committee is a group of admissions deans and pre-health advisors who meet to talk about issues regarding the AMCAS application. And then the Committee on Admissions is a separate group of 5 admissions deans that represent regions in the country. And when we were getting emails into our office initially it was about pass, no pass coursework and stuff like that, and what are we doing and how's AMCAS going to, I try to let them know, like, this is people at the highest levels across the country referring to the AAMC and their committees, are talking about this right now. I mean, it's not just being handled at the school level or that particular admissions office. It was being discussed and is still being discussed at the highest levels across the country, in the interest of the applicant, to try to figure out, like you said, what's best for the applicant, what's best for advisors, to try to figure out how we can best support them. And I just don't know that applicants or prospective applicants always know what's going on behind the scenes. But I'm trying to reassure people that there are people putting in double-digit work days for them, right?
Yeah, exactly. So again, to even double down on what you just shared, Chris, and thank you for doing that. We're not only encouraging our respective admissions colleagues to be flexible, we're also asking that they have open, frequent, and transparent communication with the pre-medical community, so those that are applying know exactly what might be expected at a particular medical school. Mm-hmm. We're also asking that they be thoughtful about the challenges that applicants may face during this unprecedented cycle. The other piece that we have done, and really Patrick's team has done, and Patrick, please jump in. We've looked at the impact that pass-fail grades may have on the AMCAS application and GPA. Mm-hmm. We've talked about, recognizing that letters of recommendation may be harder to secure because many students are no longer at their institution and may have challenges doing that. And also how an application may not have the same amount of volunteer or clinical experiences because it's just not feasible. It's not safe at this point in time. So we are working behind the scenes to encourage our schools to be sensitive and to think about those that are looking to pursue a career in medicine.
Yep. Yeah, Patrick, let's pull you in here. I mean, you're overseeing AMCAS right now. It just opened up a few days ago. Well, tell us what's new this year in AMCAS. Any new questions or fields that have been added?
Yeah, sure, Christian. So the good news is there are no new questions this year for AMCAS, so there shouldn't be any surprises for applicants or returning applicants. However, there's a couple of new things that we're putting in place, and one, everyone should know that this year, with input from the pre-health community, we are delaying the transmission of AMCAS applications by 2 weeks from June 26th to July 10th. So that means applications will go to the schools where applicants designate the applications 2 weeks later than usual, to allow more time for applicants to fill out the application, get their letters of recommendation, perhaps even finish off some of those experiences that they're working on to put in their application.
Yeah, I want to stress that. I want to jump in here really quick, Patrick. I mean, I want to stress that that's a big move to delay that transmission, because I want listeners to know is that, so what's the first date they can click submit?
Sure. So applicants can go in as of May 4th. So as of Monday, they could go in the application and begin filling out their application. On May 28th, they can then submit their application to AMCAS for verification, at which point we'll begin our verification process. Right. And then, as I noted, on July 10th, yes, they're transmitted to the school. So what I want applicants to hear is that even though that submit button becomes available on May 28th, I got to tell you, from my perspective in admissions, nobody gets a gold star if they submit at 12:01 on May 28th. Because even if it's verified within 2 weeks, med schools are not going to get it until the earliest, July 10th. So what AMCAS is giving you is more time, like Patrick just said, to fine tune that application and wrap some things up and give yourself some time to collect those letters of recommendation and things like that. So don't feel like you need, just because the button becomes available on May 28th, that you need to just click that button on May 28th, because there's nothing worse than a hastily put together application and have errors and grammatical errors and things like that in it. Okay. That's a very important point. I think it's really important to have a a complete application, or as complete as it can be before you submit it. And clearly your experience in admissions, and Jeff can tell you the same thing from his experience. That's really what you're looking for. And you're right, there's no gold stars for the 1201 submitted application.
Looks great for like a social media post, but it doesn't really, do much on our end if you're in there at 1201. Right. Hey, before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the verification process. Before we do that, since AMCAS just opened for this cycle on earlier this week, I know med schools, we were kind of worried like what that would look like. What would the cycle kind of look like? What have you seen in those first few days? Can you share any initial kind of data with us?
Yeah, sure. So we've seen an increase in overall applications being initiated. So applications being started. Quite a jump actually by about 20%. Now that's not an indication that overall the volume is going to increase this year. In fact, last year we saw a similar jump on day one. Yet we finished with overall volume at the end of the season, number of applicants flat, or right at the same number of around 50,000. And so we believe that likely, just from what we've heard from our partners in the pre-health community, from talking to applicants and the interest that's been coming into our help desk and the webinars that we've been having, that we anticipate that we're going to see numbers in line with previous cycles.
We talked about the verification process, and just to remind people, when we say verification process, what that means is a part of the AMCAS application, applicants have to do basically data entry of their transcript into the AMCAS application, and then they have to have official transcripts sent to you guys at AMCAS in DC, where it's verified that what you entered in your AMCAS application as far as your grades matches what is on your transcript, right?
That's right. We verify about 30 million data points
per cycle.
So we verify every applicant that submits an application. We verify what they enter to the transcript that we receive from their school. So it's a very thorough process, and we believe this year, with everything happening, it'll be about a 6-week turnaround from when an applicant submits to their application being verified. Oftentimes that happens more quickly, but that is the time that we anticipate. Okay,
so to be safe, think about 6 weeks, but it could be earlier if things are going well.
That's right.
Do you accept e-transcripts?
We do. In fact, the majority of our transcripts come from electronic means, whether that's from the school directly or from vendors. And in fact, we encourage schools to send them to us electronically when they're ready.
Okay, so if at all possible, send it via the e-transcript. Let's see. What about the alternative grading that Jeff was alluding to a few minutes ago? Because now a lot of schools universities and colleges have gone to pass, no pass grading. Explain to us how you guys have kind of come up with this alternative grading as the part of the standardizing the grades.
Sure. So we identified this very early on, the AAMC, as something that the medical schools would need to factor into their assessments this year. And so the AAMC team worked very closely with the associations for registrars to understand the many different ways schools may be, undergraduate institutions and other academic institutions may be having alternative grading systems. So we've done a lot of analysis on that, and we've actually put together some resources on our website for applicants and for schools as well to understand how impact your overall GPA. So you can go there and take a look. And as Jeff mentioned too, our medical schools are very well aware of these changes and are taking that into consideration as they review applications this year.
Hey, what would be your tip? What is a most common area where applicants get tripped up in this verification process? Like, where do you see the most issues coming up for this, the sending in transcripts and entering in their grades? What would you say?
Yeah, it's really, making sure you follow the instructions and you carefully fill out the coursework section. So understanding how to request transcripts and then entering the information. So an applicant may have a unfinished class, they enter a grade that they anticipate, and that grade ends up being very different from what's in their transcript. And so we really encourage applicants to do a thorough job entering their coursework section, following the guidelines on the website and in the applicant work guide, and then also how to request transcripts from schools.
Okay. So what you're saying is, if sometimes people put like a grade they're anticipating, but then when you get the official transcript, it's not there or it's not accurate, right?
That's right. That's
and
right.
What happens then? Then you kick it back to them?
So if there, usually we'll make the update if it's just, a simple error, and we'll send it back to the applicant to confirm that they agree to that.
Okay.
However, if there are numerous mistakes, we usually send that back to the applicant and ask them to re-enter the coursework section.
Okay. And then that can ultimately maybe delay the verification process, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Absolutely right.
All right. So I think people should hear that, I guess the take home message is pay close attention to the directions that's across all stages, but particularly that stage in the application process. Let's see. We talked about this pass, no pass that a lot of colleges and universities have gone to. Tell us where the AAMC has a lot of resources. Where can students find quickly some of the resources about pass, no pass, in particular, like school-specific policies? Is there a centralized resource out there?
Yes. So great question. So we have to remember here that each school has their own policies and procedures. And so your best place to get that information would be on the MSAR that Jeff referenced, that has all the school information, or checking out a school's website as well for their policies on how they're looking at grading this year.
Yeah. I mean, the MSAR, I mention it probably in every single episode. It's probably the best money you'll spend in this whole process. It is a one-stop shop place for everything that med schools do. And the AAMC has been constantly telling med school admissions offices, please update your MSAR with your latest COVID-related disruption policies and stuff.
Christian, one thing I'd add to that as well that I left out was we're starting to integrate the MSAR into AMCAS. So this year, you can actually link to MSAR from the AMCAS application. So as you're looking at schools within AMCAS, you can click on the school and you can pull that MSAR information about that school within the application itself.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that. Oh, that's a great idea.
New improvement this year. Yeah. So we're excited about that.
Hey, since we're talking about fees and people experiencing disruptions financially in their lives or their families' lives, I know that the AAMC modified the fee assistance program, and changed the structure in order for students to qualify for that. Do one of you want to explain what that looks like now?
Sure, happy to. So, the AAMC really strongly believes that the various costs associated with applying to medical school shouldn't be a barrier to studying medicine. And so we're committed to helping aspiring physicians navigate the process. For this reason, with the economic impact we're experiencing now, we've expanded the eligibility criteria for our fee assistance program from less than 300% to 400% of the national poverty guidelines. So we anticipate this will greatly expand access for the program. And we've also added a reconsideration process for applicants who are denied under the new criteria and experiencing income loss since March 2020.
Oh, wow.
So if that's the case, folks should check back in with the AAMC and the fee assistance team.
Okay. I'll put links to that in the show notes to the fee waiver. And Patrick, can you explain, if somebody qualifies for the fee waiver, what does that provide them then?
Sure. And I believe it just depends on when they're applying, if they've already taken the MCAT. But from the AMCAS perspective, they get the AMCAS fee waived and 20 designations. So they're allowed to apply to 20 schools for free within the AMCAS application, and their application is also verified by AMCAS.
Okay, great. And
I would add.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
No.
I would add that. I want to clarify something that I did say earlier. That within the fee assistance program, those applicants will get a free subscription to MSAR. What is currently at no cost to applicants is the access to the MSAR advisor reports. So that's the fee.
Oh, yes.
Fee. So I wanted to just clarify that piece.
Yeah. And I can put links to those advisor reports in the show notes. Jeff, are you referring to the one that it's pulling from the MSAR and it's talking about every med school's COVID response policies are in there?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. If it's the same document we're talking about, I'll put a link to that. It is awesome because every med school that's updated their MSAR, and there's a special section that the AAMC is telling med schools, go in there and update it right here, and we'll extract it and put it in this one PDF. It's right, correct. It is a great resource. So I'll put a link to that. I wanted to ask another question about in regards to the fee waiver, as Patrick was saying, if students qualify for the AMCAS fee waiver, most medical schools, we will see that you qualified for their fee waiver, and then medical schools usually will waive the secondary application fee too. So on our end, we can see that students qualified for that. And then a lot of our databases, our systems that process the applications that we receive, will automatically give the student a fee waiver for our secondary applications. So we kind of take it that next step at the med school side. Speaking of resources, tell us what are some of the free AAMC resources that can help applicants in completing the application? What's out there?
Sure. So, there's the pre-med resources page, AAMC.org/pre-med resources.
Okay.
They have a number of resources to help you with the application. But I would also recommend looking at some of the recent webinars that the AAMC has put out. Specifically, if you're interested in the fee assistance program, there's a webinar posted on our main fee assistance page, AAMC.org/FAP. Mm-hmm. And then there's also a number of AMCAS webinars focused on the 2021 cycle that we've put out for applicants. That's on our tutorial page. If you go to the student page of AMCAS,
okay.
There's also a page for advisors. Yeah, also a page for advisors that has the slides as well. And we can provide that to you as well if you want to post those those resources as well.
We also have a free webinar coming up designed for applicants, where we will basically talk about the competencies.
Okay.
That the AAMC has identified and provide insights about how students may want to highlight those competencies within their application.
Oh, that'll be helpful.
Also a webinar that will be coming out, I think May 22nd.
Okay. I'll work with you guys and maybe getting that link to the page or the registration site. We can put a link to that too to kind of help advertise that, because I think that's when competencies come up. I sometimes feel that applicants are a little unsure as to how to demonstrate how they met a certain competency. So it sounds like this discussion that you're going to be hosting will be incredibly helpful. One thing I found in AMCAS that I think every applicant should look at is you guys have put together a 76-page guide to filling out the application. I think a student's going to go into this application process. It's kind of a beast, but you've put together this walkthrough of how to complete the application. So I'll put links to that too in the show notes. Any other resources, Patrick, that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think, just as you mentioned, that guide is linked throughout on the application as well. You can click on the help links in that specific area of the application when you're in there to get that information. So rather than reading through it, if you're in the application, you can pull up the help test.
Oh, that's cool.
Specific to that area. So that may be more helpful than sitting down one night and reading the 73 pages.
Well, I'm glad that's another cool integration. Well, I've not filled out the AMCAS application or see it on your end, so I didn't know that. That's really cool. You guys put that in there. Speaking of, we talked a little bit ago, Patrick, about some of the places where students can have hiccups in the verification process. I'm sure there's the AMCAS, there's the call center or the student services center. What are some of the FAQs that come into the call center that you get all the time, and maybe we can get some of these answers out right now to help somebody prevent them from having to get on the phone and go to the call center?
So I think we've covered a couple of the areas, but I would say carefully filling out the coursework section. So that would be an area where you would want to perhaps read the user guide, at least that piece of it, before you start that section. I think understanding how to request transcripts. And the last one, which we haven't really talked about much, is knowing what you can and can't change after your application.
Oh yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. So most of the application, just to be aware of, that you can't make changes once it's submitted. But obviously the personal information section, so sections around, your address, contact information, those are the areas that you can go back in and change after you've submitted. So you're going to want to check that out, and you can look at the certification page, and that page is on there is a 4 tips for completing your AMCAS application page on the AMCAS website that you can look at. You can see which sections you can and cannot change.
And this is an important point that Patrick just pointed out, that there's certain things that you can't change once you click submit. And one of those things would be like your personal statement or anything in your experiences section. This is where as I said earlier, taking the time to go through your application with a fine-tooth comb and making sure everything's accurate and grammatically correct. Because if you click submit in haste at 12:01 on May 28th, and then you notice in your personal statement that there's a glaring error or a grammatical error, and you're doing a face palm, you can call the AMCAS center, but they're going to say it's submitted, that they can't update it. And med schools are not going to take those kind of updates to say, here's my new personal statement. The volume that we get and the way our processes work are usually electronic. So we can't take those updates. So it's important to know what you can and can't change.
Chris, can I add one other
absolutely. Yeah.
To what Patrick said earlier, I think it's really critically important that an applicant submit the best application possible. And so to your point, Chris, if as a former admissions dean, reading an application that is poorly done with typos or grammar, or that's just incomplete. And if I'm screening, 5,000 applications, if it's difficult to read, if it's not carefully constructed, then as a screener, I'm more likely to put that to the side when I know I have 4,999 more to read.
Absolutely.
So I think it's critically important for the applicant, again, to take their time, ensure that the application and the material captured within the application is as comprehensive and says exactly what you would like it to say before pushing that button at 12:01 or whatever.
I appreciate that, Jeff. You're preaching to the choir, because I feel the same way when we're reading these applications day and night at the office, on the couch at home for months. And so I'm glad that you said that, because I've been preaching that on this podcast and trying to stress that to listeners to really pay attention to those things. I think if students have heard that you can click submit on May 28th, and then the first data download doesn't happen until July 10th. And Patrick said this verification could take 6 weeks this year. That looks like a 6-week window between May 28th and July 10th. But I don't want people to think that if you're not verified right away and you're not verified until July 12th or July 14th, they're late. I want listeners to know, and I'm going to talk about this in other podcast episodes I have coming up with some other people, that a lot of admissions offices are pushing back all of our timelines and screening and inviting for interview and then having interview days are all being pushed back this year because of we're adjusting to what AMCAS and the AAMC has done with the transmissions and with our own processes and looking at how the MCAT dates have changed. And so I want people to know that we're all thinking about this, and most of us are all making adjustments in our cycles so that we can push things back. And so I just don't want people to think that if they're not getting verified right away and getting that first data download on July 10th, that you're not, behind or anything. So I wanted to stress that. Patrick, a couple really quick questions for you, and then we'll just start to wrap things up. If I'm reapplying to med school, do I have to resend my transcripts?
Yes, you need to request that you resend transcripts as part of your application.
Okay. My other quick question is, if I'm reapplying again, do I have to resend my letters of recommendation, or have you hung on to them for my next application?
You need to resubmit those as well.
Okay, good. So I wanted to get that out there loud and clear that if you're reapplying, and there's no shame in reapplying, it happens every year. But if you're reapplying, then you have to resend those transcripts and letters of recommendation back in, because things may have changed in your transcripts and the AAMC is not hanging on to those letters of rec from the previous application. Hey, Patrick, any last common pitfalls you see applicants fall into during your part of the process when they're initiating the application?
No, again, just hammering home your point and Jeff's point to just make sure you check your application thoroughly, make sure it's complete as you can make it, and then making sure you read all the school-specific requirements for your application as well.
Yeah. Just to kind of wind things down, I want to get each of your perspectives, and then we'll let you go for the day. But Jeff, given your perspective at the AAMC, where you see all the different committees and departments working and collaboratively and adapting these changes, what message would you like to put out there for applicants this year?
Thanks, Chris. The thing I really want to emphasize is that the AAMC fully recognizes and is thinking about the realities that applicants may be experiencing this year. And I hope that those that listen to this podcast fully appreciate that we do and we are thinking about ways in which we can reduce any level of anxiety and stress that normally comes with the application process. And particularly given this time of uncertainty, what we are really trying to do is to offer additional time to complete the application, offering additional resources so that those that may have been impacted financially, for example, by this pandemic, may have some financial resources made available to them, and that we are working with the admissions community writ large to emphasize that, hey, this is very different, and we are communicating with the community that is most impacted during this admissions process, and that's the applicant, the pre-health advisor, the admissions deans, and those that, again, work within that space. And in fact, one of the things that we are doing internally is that we have an admissions task force. So every unit or staff that has some impact or influence with the application process, we're meeting on a weekly basis to say, okay, let's make sure that we're all coordinated, that we're all working together so that we can provide the best experience for the user of our services. And that would be, again, the applicant, pre-health advisor, and admissions dean. So I just want folks to keep this in perspective.
Yeah.
What's most important, please be safe. Please stay well. and we will do what we can to support you through this process from a national perspective.
Great. Thanks. Patrick, any final message for applicants from the AMCAS perspective for this year?
We wish all the aspiring physicians well through this process, and please don't hesitate to reach out to AMCAS and the AAMC for help.
Yeah. Yep. And I'll put links to your Student Services Center. I'm sure you have it plastered all over the AMCAS site, but just more places it can't hurt. Hey, guys, this has been really informative. I'm grateful for your time today and putting a voice, helping, put a voice to AMCAS and the AAMC, and for listeners to hear that there's a lot going on behind the scenes to help support them. And I got to tell you guys what, from my perspective, at the end of the day, we still have to fill our classes next year. And so medical schools and working with AAMC and AMCAS are trying to be flexible and adapting to these changes that are coming at us seemingly every hour or every day. So I'm grateful, guys. Thanks so much for doing this with me.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Hey, I look forward to seeing you out on the road someday when we're back, able to travel and see it at one of the AAMC's great conferences.
Likewise.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.